All right, welcome to the innovation stage here at RETCON office. I hope you're having an awesome time so far. I'm excited to bring our first speakers to the virtual stage, so please join me in welcoming them now.
Thank you so much for having us. I'm Courtney. I'm a principal at Alate Partners, which is a venture fund based in Toronto and San Francisco, and we invest in real estate technology. And today I'm joined by Greg Hayes and Clint Robinson, the CEOs of Branch and Lane. So Alate is an investor in both companies, and I have the privilege to work with Greg and Clint and their incredible teams, and have seen the growth over the last couple of years. And as an investor, I'm always captivated by the story of how a company started, what sort of drove the founders to get started. So Clint, maybe we'll start with you. Maybe introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about Lane and why you founded the company.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. It's great to be here. I'm Clint. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Lane. I'm a deep technologist. I've been working in technology forever, since I was like 6 years old. I started on like a Commodore 64. I've got a degree in computer science, master's in artificial intelligence, and I've been working on technology for enterprise for 2 decades after I graduated. So I worked in healthcare, I worked in automotive, I worked in banking, disrupting and modernizing all those industries as they migrated to to bring on technology platforms. And during that time, I was always so I've built large teams. I've worked with large enterprise. I built my own companies with my own large teams. And me and my co-founder were always kind of surprised that the office world wasn't moving as fast as the consumer world. And we were really frustrated by the amount of friction, the lack of seamless technology that connects an office and makes everything as easy to use as possible. And if you use an example like Uber took something that used to be full of friction and complicated, like hailing, like you used to have to hail a cab and wait for them to show up, and like hopefully they would take your credit card. And then Uber came and applied this beautiful UI UX and seamless experience to it, and that entire industry exploded. And we don't even think about that anymore. You just get from point A to point B. And we were thinking, why can't we do that for the office environment? What if we did that for our work life? And everybody who goes to work every day has this seamless connection all the way through, and you can just worry about doing your job and not doing all the friction. And that's where Lane came from originally. So that's the original story.
Yeah, I mean, I always forget sometimes when you're getting out of a cab to pay. Is that awkward moment where you're just starting to step out? So I think it'll be interesting. Like, what are those things of the office as people sort of change the way that we interact with our buildings? Greg, you've got a different story, sort of more a different path and a different story of where you're focused on. Maybe tell us a little bit about that.
You had to make me go after Clint after that. Yeah, I'm maybe not a deep technologist. I'm a deep real estatist. So my background, I'm Greg Hayes. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Branch. I have a background in institutional real estate, and then in prop tech, and now in the world of office furniture. So to give you a little bit of background on Branch, we're a full stack direct to enterprise and direct to consumer office furniture company. We make it easy, fast, and affordable for individuals and teams of all sizes to create inspiring workspaces. So me and my co-founders, we founded Branch as just an enterprise-facing business in 2018. The opportunity that we saw at that time was that historically, the office furniture industry only really offered companies 2 purchase options, and neither of them were great. So the first was companies could go with traditional higher end office furniture purchased through kind of traditional dealers, where the furniture is beautiful, it's extremely well built, but it's incredibly expensive. It's draped in this confusing process and has extremely long lead times. And then their other option was kind of at the far end of the other end of the spectrum. Fast furniture is, inexpensive, comes quickly, but really isn't built to last in office environments. And that kind of left the tenant to figure out space design and installation, insurance, dealing with the building or the union, maintenance of the furniture, all of these other things that are involved in the office furniture procurement process by themselves. And so it just seemed to us that that left an enormous gap in the middle of the market for businesses who wanted the quality and attention to detail of higher end furniture, at more of a price point, paired with more of a price point, and the relative convenience of the fast furniture providers. And so the result was this full stack office furniture experience that we call Branch, which we built on 4 pillars of ease, value, speed, and service. And then about a year ago, we took those same principles that we had applied to the enterprise model and we applied them to a consumer model, which, as you can probably imagine, has been exceptionally successful as people transition to working more and more from home on a more permanent basis.
I have a Branch desk in front of me, and it's definitely been a lifesaver through the pandemic. I was like the many people who, were thrust into work from home, and after 9 days, like on a couch, because we only had like one workable surface in the house, had to figure out what to do. And, it was hard at the beginning. I mean, you didn't do direct to consumer at all at the beginning. So that was a very big shift. Maybe you could talk, we'll start with you. Maybe you could talk a little bit about, how the pandemic was for you and how that shifted sort of the strategy or influenced the roadmap that you have ahead of you.
Yeah, so it's been really interesting. The pandemic has obviously been tough, but in a way, it's been a boon for our business. It accelerated our entry into the consumer market probably by 2 or 3 years, and so it not only probably accelerated revenue, it created this kind of brand halo for us that didn't previously exist. When we think about how long it takes to build a brand when you're strictly a B2B or strictly an enterprise facing brand, it's a really long road and it's a very expensive road. And what appears to have happened in our case is that our core business, the B2B and especially SMB focused business, has really benefited from this shift towards the consumer market. And then just in terms of what that looked like, because we had no plans to enter the consumer market, we kind of went from this world overnight where we were doing, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 transactions where we were delivering tractor trailer loads of furniture very quickly to delivering, 1 to 2 pieces of furniture at a time. That meant that we had to change everything about the business essentially over the course of 4 or 6 weeks. So, the way we thought about marketing, the way we packaged our furniture, we had to negotiate a contract with UPS, we had to retrain our warehouse staff, we had to reorient the website, literally everything about the business except for the furniture itself had to change. So it was a stressful and interesting experience, but it has certainly paid off and has probably left us in a better position coming out of the pandemic than we would have been otherwise.
And so when you look at the business now or think about how people are going to work, are you thinking about consumer? Are people going to be working at home, fully back to the office? Like, are you starting to see things transition?
Yeah, so I'd say 2 things on this point. The first is that we are seeing almost every single company that we talk to moving to a hybrid model, which is really, really interesting because it's actually, in effect, doubled the size of our addressable market. Now, all of these knowledge workers, instead of just needing 1 desk and 1 chair and 1 filing cabinet, they all kind of need 2 because they're doing work in 2 places. But the other thing that we're seeing, and this is interestingly, like even as early as last April at the height of the pandemic in New York, where I'm located, we saw companies requesting space plans that looked surprisingly similar to what they had been doing pre-pandemic, which was a huge shock to us. And like in our case, we had gone so far as to put out these thought leadership pieces about what future office layouts were going to look like. And we had even designed and started to produce this kind of like pandemic appropriate furniture, full height partitions and space eating credenzas and things like that. We thought we were actually like going to crush it with these new products, and we got crickets. And what we've learned is that everyone was kind of like planning for a standard reemergence, maybe not in terms of the split between home and office, but in what work would look like at the office. And I'll be interested to hear what Clint's seen on this, but I think it might show this like eternal optimism that exists amongst entrepreneurs and business leaders generally, where, we're not selling to people who necessarily are always planning for the worst. They're probably successful in part because they're positive people. They're always thinking 5 steps ahead. They fully expect things to go back to normal. And so they're planning their office layouts accordingly. And so we actually think that we're seeing that we're re-entering this workplace reality that's going to look probably very similar for most companies to what it looked like before they left the office last year.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more actually, because we're planning out our new office now. And we're looking at how we furnish it. And we're probably going to reach out to you soon, actually. as we kid out our new office. But you're right, it's like, it's not radically different than what it used to look like. It's because a lot more people are working remote and they'll be in occasionally, but the office still looks like an office. It's a collaboration area. So nothing's like drastically changing.
So, but Clint, I mean, I think this is a perfect sort of segue to what you're working on, because you at Lane has been sort of partnering with landlords through the transition. I know there was, millions of stickers created and printed on floors and walls to help people navigate, in last summer that weren't used. And then, people have been really thinking about what does the tech in the office look like, what's it like for landlords, but you also serve enterprises. So maybe you could talk a little bit about what the role of Lane, how the role of Lane has evolved through the pandemic, and also, what kind of technology might be important for people going back to the workplace.
Yeah, we're in a very interesting position because we're a no-code platform, and that makes us very different than a lot of other players in this industry. So as a no-code, and we also power the whole workplace ecosystem. So we power from office building into flex, right into the office itself, working directly with companies. So that put us in a pretty unique space. And the no-code platform is actually really important because as COVID happened, we didn't have to release any new functionality or spend 6 months developing occupancy management and try to introduce like adding COVID screeners into our tech stack. Because we're no code, our clients could just drag and drop and add all this stuff in right away. So it was really interesting how fast we could respond to the pandemic with our clients in real time. If they wanted to change how room booking works or change how visitor management works, to like layer on a COVID screener or occupancy management, they could literally just drag and drop, save it, and they were ready to go. I think what we saw, yeah, there was a lot of stickers. There's a lot of physical stuff that people put out to not a big return. Nobody really came back. We've seen about 10 to 15% occupancy across the board at all of our customers. And I think it's because we're waiting for that like safe return. Now that we've seen the vaccine roll out, we're actually seeing more and more actually occupancy at our clients. So it's gone from 10% to 25. In Australia, it's up to like 50, 60% already. So we're seeing that. And as Greg's saying, it's really just a return to work. There's no like, nobody's like drastically changing how the office operates. It's really just, we're getting back into the flow of what we used to do. I will say though, that the remote thing has changed and a desire for everything to be digital. This was a very analog industry. Like visitor management was still done with a pen and paper at the front desk. If you wanted to renew your pass, you had to go down into an office and talk to a guy. You're probably still using a physical pass to get in through doors. That's all changed. And maybe it even gave the industry some breathing room to roll out a lot of this technology as the buildings were closed, but expect everything to be touchless now and all the processes to be digital, well, at least where Lane is rolled out at these buildings. All those manual processes, those forms, those old Excel sheets, those are all now on a digital intelligent platform so that you can just interact with this stuff seamlessly through your mobile app. You've got touchless entry through the door, through the elevator, into the office. Expect to see a lot more of that. But I don't think, I don't think we're going to see like, all cubicles divided with ceiling dividers and everybody in a literal bubble, which is great because I think what we're looking for is that return to collaboration. People want to go back to the office. They're like, they can't wait to get back to the office and collaborate with their team. And what's really exciting is we don't have to do that 9 to 5 Monday to Friday. And if you have a digital platform that helps you do that, it's going to make it easier to facilitate that. Like I want to go in Monday to Wednesday and book my space and make sure I know who's there, get seamless access in, work with the team. Maybe I'm going to work from home Monday to Friday or Thursday to Friday.
And you mentioned sort of no code, a no code platform that sort of gives people the flexibility to use features as they wish. Like any examples of how people are using different features, or like when you look across the buildings that you're in, are there any sort of unique things different buildings are doing that you can tell us about?
Oh, absolutely. It's really exciting when you give people like a Lego set that they can build exactly what they need. And I think what's interesting is when you just talk about use cases, how many use cases do we support? It's thousands and thousands now. And this is why we built a no-code platform. A lot of learnings early on that every building is different, every company is different, every region's different. Take like COVID like screeners that people were rolling out. What worked in New Jersey was different than New York. And you can see those buildings like from each other, but they have different things that are mandated in terms of like what information you must collect to allow somebody to come back, completely different. So what's really interesting is just the diverse range of use cases that people are supporting. It could be a monthly bus pass where people register for their bus pass, scan in at the bus, and that's all powered by Lane, that specific workflow. It could be the check-in process for the fire wardens to make sure that they're all checking in and checking out so that if they need to be communicated to, you know that they're there. It could just be the room booking system, but because you work in a different way, you get approvals on your room booking. You can't just book it. It has to go to approval, and then you can, maybe it goes to like a catering or even like a facilities management. That was an interesting one where you can request a room to be kitted out any way you want. Maybe you want bleachers in there and you want AV equipment to build out all those workflows. So it's really, I think what's incredible is the fact that there are no standard use cases. And that's what the industry's really been asking for. So we're really excited to give people this flexibility and power to get exactly what they need.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I think it'll be sort of interesting to see how the role, how landlords change their role, or what kind of changes that they make the building. We're seeing more people adopt more of a hospitality-like approach, or a lot of conversations about that. A lot of conversations about how do you integrate flex? What does it mean that you have different people coming into the office on different days? What is the influence? So, I think, Greg, you're in New York. You serve sort of the US as well as Canada, but you might be I'm based in Toronto, we're in lockdown, so you might be a bit ahead of us. What are you seeing? Or we talked that physical layout is a bit the same. Are you seeing any changes in the way that people design their space, or think about flex, or think about tech?
Yeah, so a couple of things on flex. One is this, like, okay, obviously, I think it's flexible to have a more hybrid structure. It's more flexible for your employees. And so just making sure when you're like a provider of a physical good for a company, to be able to meet that demand flexibly, both on premise and off premise, that's a big thing. But the biggest sea change that we're seeing in terms of an approach to flexibility in our world is the emergence of landlords who are actually taking like a flexible approach to things, which would have never happened in the past. But they're suddenly interested in pre-building and pre-furnishing office portfolios in order to capture at least some of this emerging flex clientele. And like they get it. The way so many companies look at long-term leases has changed to be competitive on a material subset of the market. They need to provide these like pre-built, pre-furnished spaces, allow tenants to move in and out quickly, or at least quickly relative to a traditional 5 or 10-year lease. And like if they don't adapt, and they see this, if they don't adapt, WeWork and Regus and Industrious and even the sublet market will be happy to serve those tenants.
So when you're working with landlords, are you fitting out flex spaces for them, fitting out, like helping them, like what is flex, like what does flex mean to them? Is it individual units that are just easier to get started on, flexible leases?
Yeah, so they wouldn't call it flex for the most part. They think of things in terms of like pre-built and pre-furnished, but what they're actually getting at is, okay, I'm going to pre-build it, I'm going to pre-furnish it, and I'm going to lease it out on an 18 or 24 or 36 month term, as opposed to I would never look at anything under 7 years historically. And then when that tenant moves out, those same finishes, the same furniture are going to be rolled over into the next. And that is by definition a much more flexible, much more sustainable approach to using your office footprint. And so they may not be calling it flex because they probably don't want to call it flex. I mean, it kind of goes against the way that they underwrite their assets, but it is by nature flexible.
I was gonna ask Clint, you're doing a lot of stuff. You're focused on flex now. The product supports flex. You've got more flex customers now. Like maybe talk a little bit about what you're doing and what you're seeing landlords use flex, or how landlords are using flex.
Yeah, I think they're all, I agree with Greg, they're all rolling out a solution like this. They're all coming up with an offering that is flex, even if they're not calling it flex. How do they provide like a fully turnkey managed solution? Whether it's a couple offices, like I want to be able to book 3 offices, I want to be able to book a room for 20, or even if I just want to book a conference room hourly. I think they're looking across the board now because they've seen the success of these kind of turnkey managed solutions that Industrious and Breather and WeWork and all these companies were popping up to provide. And they're all looking for a technology solution to layer on top of it to make it seamless again. Because the last thing you want to do is add flex space and then have it not integrated into the rest of your tech stack or the rest of your even your operating model at the building. Now it's just really hard to use and interact with. So the models that we're finding really interesting is where the landlords are working directly with the company to give them a technology layer that lets them tap into flex seamlessly. So that if we work for a large corporation like me and you, and we want to go have like book a meeting space, all the meeting space in our office is booked. We're going to be able to seamlessly just go down, like book the stuff downstairs. That's shared like flex space. Or the same with if we have a team of 20 people joining us from another city for a month, we can actually just go onto the platform directly and book it right for our company. So I think they're all looking at this kind of solution. So you're definitely going to see the rise of landlord-powered flex solutions. I think that even kind of compete with the WeWorks, the Industrious, because they already control, like they own the real estate and they control it. It's easier for them to provide it. So they're kind of seeing that cost benefit where they're getting great returns on this stuff. Like if I can set up a turnkey conference room for people and bill it hourly, it's actually got a great rate of return overall.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's quite like a transformation from how it used to be. Like Greg, you know, you were at Breather. I always thought it was a brilliant idea to be able to access it, but it wasn't, there was nothing seamless about it. Like you have to go and put a credit card, which might have a different budget. You know, it's a different budget, it's a different expense profile. It's not something, it doesn't feel like an extension of your space in the way that you're talking about, Clint. You know, it couldn't at the time, but I think that it's that's a big transition to think about how do you do it. And then, you know, you're starting to hear some landlords and some companies talk about what is sort of amenity across buildings. So, you know, if you're in a Dream or Bentall or, you know, any Brookfield building, can you use amenities across buildings or start like, that's something that's new that you haven't been able to do in a unified way in the past. So I think it'll be interesting to see how it evolves and who, if anyone, adopts that kind of mindset.
Almost like Spotify for real estate assets. It doesn't matter what record label, I can get all my music in one place.
Yeah. And why not? I mean, our team needs that. Like and COVID's done some interesting stuff too. We're like, we've hired remote for the first time. Because we realized, hey, we can work remote. So we're standing up teams all over the place. And if we need somebody to hop into an office because we have a team in Houston now, where do they go? How do we get them into a space easily? So maybe if I am a Dream client or I'm a Brookfield client and I get access to those amenities, we can just hop in and use a shared meeting room. That's pretty cool. That's super powerful for my company.
So we've got just a couple minutes left. Any parting thoughts? Maybe Greg, start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like probably the biggest change for us over the past year, the thing that we've had to focus on the most that technology has enabled has probably been building and maintaining culture. And so I think it's going to be interesting to see how companies do that, if they're moving to you know, strictly work from home or remote work, or if they're going to hybrid. How do they build that culture? I mean, for us, we've been able to leverage technology for stand-ups and executive presentations and, you know, cross-functional lunches and things like that. And I think it's just going to be so essential for companies to figure out how to leverage that technology to ensure that their culture and their communication doesn't wither, but actually ends up thriving.
Clint, anything from you from any technology practices that your team's been doing? Any other thoughts on how you're going to return back to work?
Some technology we've rolled out is, it's really helping us support remote teams more. But I think we're getting, in the practices of like daily stand-ups or one-on-ones. We even started like doing random Zoom meetings where you actually just get assigned to like 3 random people in the company and you all hop on a Zoom meeting together. Because one thing we notice is teams are just getting so isolated because everything's a meeting now. And you don't have that random bump in from the person who's doing product development with the person who's doing customer success. And they just weren't meeting and collaborating as much. So we started this kind of like just randomized, like hop on a Zoom together and talk about what you do here. That's been super helpful. I think ultimately though, it's like, it really is getting back into the office and getting our teams back together into a physical space. There seems to be nothing that really replaces that. And I really excited to like like have that rollout, get back in office, be collaborating again. Technology is awesome and it can like facilitate a lot of this, but it doesn't replace that one-on-one human interaction. Nothing can really replace that.
Yeah, I can't wait to get back to the office, but I also think that hopefully we can take these practices and connect better with the colleagues that we have in other places, because we're not all in the same place. And so how do you keep these practices so that people who are out of the office can feel like they're as close to a colleague that is sort of next door to you in the office. So thanks so much for sharing your insights. It was great to catch up with both of you, and I look forward to the rest of the content at RETCON today.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Courtney, Clinton, and Greg. That was an amazing chat, and I know the audience really enjoyed it, and they're giving you a huge virtual round of applause. For the audience, it's time for you to make your way to your next session. Along the way, make sure you accept your connection request and take some time to check out our amazing exhibits. Thanks so much, and we'll see you around.